Welcome back, everyone. So today, the title of our video is the Abdal Malik coin and devotion to the five wounds of Christ. This is a very provocative title. I'm sure you'd agree. But actually there's something in store here that indicates a link between the two. So let's review what we learned from the last video before we proceed. We'd worked out that the Arab sustaining coin of Abd al Malik was depicting the sacrum, i.e. the location in Golgotha where a reliquary of the Holy Cross was located. There was a little bit of debate about whether there was just a silver cross there or whether there was some wood from the Holy Cross at that location. But regardless, it was a site of pilgrimage and of devotion in Jerusalem. But we also noticed that instead of a cross beneath the arch on the coin, there was a spear associated with Jesus' death. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. And we pointed out that the image of two banners coming out from the spear would fit with this description in John's Gospel. As we said, the spear has two streams, blood and water. It is not anti-Christian, but affirming the victory of God. On each side of the spear was the message, victory of God, Nasir Allah. But I imagine that the sacrament and the Holy Sepulchre were in two different places. Certainly they're considered two different locations today, but that wasn't always the case. Various locations around Jerusalem have been suggested as the site of Jesus' crucifixion and burial, but in recent times only two have been deemed worthy of serious consideration. The traditional site lies within the area now occupied by the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the Christian quarter of the Old City. And you see the picture of the church there to the right. The huge church embraces within its walls a hill called Latin Calvary and nearby the traditional tomb of Christ. The other contending location is a rocky hill commonly called Gordon's Calvary, just north of Jerusalem's Old City. It was named in honour of a British military leader, General Charles Gordon, who promoted the site in the 19th century. Near Gordon's Calvary is a quiet garden with a rock-hewn tomb, popularly called the Garden Tomb, held by some to have been the sepulchre of Jesus. Now it's probably best to look at this map here. So the map there shows us where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the other newer site from the 19th century that was proposed as the burial of Jesus is in the top part of the map, labelled the Garden Tomb. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is inside the walls of today's Jerusalem. Does that disqualify it as the authentic site? The simple answer is no. The walls that now surround the Old City are not the walls of Jesus' day. They were built in the 16th century. Excavations and literary evidence show that when Jesus was crucified, the line of the city wall ran south of the site on which the Church of the Holy Sepulchre now stands. Ancient tradition is another important consideration when evaluating alleged holy sites. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre has a long-standing tradition in its favour that can be traced back to the time of Constantine, the first Roman emperor to profess Christianity. According to tradition, Queen Helena, Constantine's mother, made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem in AD 326. The Christians living in Jerusalem at that time pointed out the location of Calvary and Jesus' tomb to Helena and her travelling companion, the historian Eusebius. It was an unexpected place. They claimed that the holy site lay underneath Jerusalem's temple of Venus or Aphrodite. Isn't that interesting? Now, when we think about the reference to Aphrodite in relation to the black stone in the Kaaba, that's a bit of a coincidence, but we'll leave that one for another day. So, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was considered in the past the site of both the crucifixion, i.e. place known as Golgotha, and also the site of Jesus' burial. So that's all contained within the site of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Now, what is the relevance of the spear? Well, with that too, there is also a link to Jerusalem. The Holy Lance, also known as the Spear of Longinus, the Spear of Destiny, or the Holy Spear, is alleged to be the lance that pierced the side of Jesus as he hung on the cross during his crucifixion. As with other instruments of the Passion, the lance is only briefly mentioned in the Christian Bible, but later became the subject of extra biblical traditions in the medieval church. Relics purported to be the lance began to appear as early as the 6th century, originally in Jerusalem. So we have a strong link there with Jerusalem again. And this may strengthen the case that the coin that Abd al Malik minted is basically celebrating important things found in Jerusalem. So the lance, which is in Greek called lanke, is mentioned in the Gospel of John, but not in the Synoptic Gospels. The Gospel states that the Romans planned to break Jesus' legs, a practice known as crucifixion, which was a method of hastening death during the crucifixion. Because it was the eve of the Sabbath, the followers of Jesus needed to entomb him because of Sabbath laws. Just before they did so, they noticed that Jesus was already dead and that there was no reason to break his legs, and no bone will be broken. And so it fulfilled that prophecy. To make sure that he was dead, a Roman soldier stabbed him in the side, and we have already referred to that passage. The key thing is that when he was pierced in the side, there came out blood and water, which appears to be what the coin of Abd al Malik is pointing to. The earliest known references to Holy Lance relics date to the 6th century. The Breviary of Jerusalem, circa 530, describes the lance on display at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So that's where it was located. In his Expositio Samorum, Cassiodorus asserts the continued presence of the lance in Jerusalem. A report by the Piacenza pilgrim, circa 570, places the lance in the Church of Zion. Gregory of Tours described the lance and other relics of the Passion in his Libri Miraculorum, 574 to 594. The Holy Lance is also supposed to have been stolen from Rome by Alaric and his Visigoths during their plundering in August 410. Therefore, it could have been buried together with Alaric among tons of gold, silver, and the golden menorah in Cosenza, southern Italy, in the fall of 410. Nobody has found Alaric's tomb and treasure that was probably emptied by the Byzantines, and therefore the Holy Lance could possibly appear some hundreds of years later in Jerusalem. So it's a bit of a long shot. It doesn't really matter if it actually was the authentic lance or not for the purposes of what we're doing. The key thing is pilgrims believed that this was the Holy Lance in Jerusalem, and that's reason enough for it to appear on the coin. So in 614, Jerusalem was captured by the Sasanian general. The Chronicon Paschale says that the Holy Lance was among the relics captured, but one of his associates gave it to Nicetas, who brought it to the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople later that year. However, De Locus Sanctus, describing the pilgrimage of Arculf in 670 AD, places the lance in Jerusalem at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Arculf is the last of the medieval pilgrims to report the lance in Jerusalem, as Willibald and Bernard make no mention of it. So we have an eyewitness account of the lance being in Jerusalem in 670. That's the key thing, really. And the coin was minted a couple of decades later. So it doesn't have to be in Jerusalem at that time. Probably was, unless there was some significant reason for it to be removed so soon afterwards. But at least there's certainly a memory of it being there. And that, again, strengthens the case for the spear depicted in the coin to do with this spear in Jerusalem. But what about the mysterious 4 pellets on the coin on either side of the spear, 2 above and 2 beneath? I've highlighted them there in yellow so you can see them more clearly. You can see that the top 2 are a little bit wider, the bottom 2 are a bit closer together. Okay, and then in between, as it were, is the spear. Okay, and just so we're reminded again, on the left and right of the spear is the word Nasser Allah, which means victory to God. Okay. Now, could those 4 pellets represent the holy nails? Do you see those ones again? Um, it's possible. A tradition exists that Saint Helena found the Holy Cross and nails in Jerusalem. So again, the nails are connected with Jerusalem as well, as you'd expect, I suppose. Sozomen and Theodorus reported that when Helena, the mother of Constantine the Great, discovered the true cross in Jerusalem in the 4th century AD, the holy nails were recovered too. Now, I think the nails were, as we can see in the passage below, were basically reused in a helmet and so forth. I'm not really interested in that side of things. The nails were probably not in Jerusalem, but they had been at one stage. Okay, so we have the possibility that the nails represent the holy nails. Sorry, the 4 pellets represent the holy nails that pierced Jesus. But there's a debate in tradition whether Jesus was pierced by 3 nails or 4 nails. What did the people in Syria think happened in terms of the crucifixions? Did Jesus have 4 nails or 3 nails? That would be an interesting one. And if we find that that matches up with the coin, that would strengthen our case. Well, believe it or not, when I was looking for this, I found that the earliest crucifixion in an illuminated manuscript is the Syriac Rabula Gospels from the late 6th century. And if you look at the feet of Jesus, you can see that there's not 1 nail, but 2 nails. So you have 2 nails at the bottom, 2 nails at top, which match perfectly with the concept depicted on the coin. Now, there are some versions of this coin where the banners of that are coming out from the spear are on the left side. So we have, in a previous video, I've looked at multiple specimens of the coin. So some of them depict the what we will call as streams coming out from the spear. Some of them are on the right, coming out on the right side, some on the left side. Now, in the illustration here, it's on the left hand side. Okay, so I've highlighted where the nails are there in the picture. The Syriac Rabula Gospels depicts Jesus crucified with 4 nails, not 3, and this matches the coin, which is incredible, really, when we think about it. Here's a close-up again. The coin proclaims, I would argue, the 5 wounds of Christ with the words victory of God. Now, that's a problem for people who argue that the Quran is against or doesn't believe in the divinity of Jesus. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe it is true. But here's the problem. If this coin was minted in the mid-690s and the Quran is saying that Jesus wasn't divine, that means the Quran couldn't have been finished before the 690s. It must have been after the period of Abd al Malik's coins. So I think that's an important conclusion we could take. I think we have to trust the coin here. The coin is saying something very symbolic, and what more symbolic could there be? We've got essentially 3 things linked with the area. We have the sacrum in Jerusalem. We have the lance in Jerusalem. We have the nails which were found in Jerusalem. Okay, we have this depiction of the crucifixion, which was a Syriac one, the Rabula Gospels from the late 6th century, so about 100 years earlier than the coin, and it matches up with this coin. So there's a lot there to think about. And just to wrap up loose ends, what about this other coin? Now, you remember that we had Paul Ellis talking to us about Abdal Malik's menorah coin, which unusually was a 5-branch one. Now, I have looked at an Israeli numismatic site that basically said it couldn't be Jewish because it had 5 branches and not 7. So that made me wonder, maybe I've got Abd al Malik wrong, because I previously had thought he must have a Jewish background when he had a menorah. But if the Jews are basically saying, well, this is not properly Jewish because it's the wrong number of branches, that kind of made me think, well, what is the significance of 5 branches, if there is a significance? Presumably there is, but could be just random, but I'd like to think that there is some significance to it. So according to the Numismatic News website, the obverse of the 14mm diameter coin depicts what appears to be a 5-branch menorah or candelabra, or the dome of a mosque if the coin is turned sideways. This is, I think, them trying to impose a possible meaning based on the belief that there was a mosque there at the time. But in any case, in obedience to a Talmudic law that temple implements not to be copied or replicated, the 7-branch menorah only appears on Judaic coins of Matthias Antigonus in 40 to 37 BCE or BC. The legend translates to, "There is no God but Allah alone." The reverse repeats this kalima or statement of faith legend within a circle. So you have that twice. The repeat of the legend is unusual for Islamic coins. Again, I question if it's Islamic. Usually coins include the prophetic mission statement alluding to Muhammad being the apostle of Allah. But here we just have a simple "there is no God but Allah alone," which is very much like the Jewish Shema. All right, but we have 5 branches. It says another problem: a variety of the coin depicts 7 branches. So that kind of puts a spanner in the works for those who say that there hasn't been a 7-branch version. Is this in deference to Muslim sensibilities in the same way the standing caliph coin series modified the Byzantine Christian cross on steps design? Could it be a design mistake made by the coin die engraver? According to American Numismatic Society adjunct curator and first vice president David Hendon, as we move into the Islamic period lamps, there are many examples with menorahs of 5, 7, 9, even 11 branches, usually an odd number because there is usually a central light and in pairs around. These occur in many different styles, from realistic to stylized, sometimes upon palm branch instead of a base, sometimes as part of a geometric design. According to Hendon, coins on which a menorah-type lamp appears have a very clear tripod base, which is an important clue, which rules out the idea that it's a mosque that's being depicted when turned upside down. Now, interestingly, a trident or a tripod base obviously has got 3 legs, which could be connected potentially with the Trinity there. I just pointed that out. All right. So the question is, there are 5 branches on the menorah. Could the coin be a depiction of the 5 wounds of Christ? If that's true, then we have a lot of coins by Abd al Malik that are interconnected with Jesus. So we have Jesus depicted as the angel of the Lord, which is what's typically labeled as the standing caliph coin. We have the Arab Sasanian coin, which, as we saw, had the sacrum and the spear on it, which essentially depicts the cross of Christ, and the spear with the words "victory of God," emphasizing the crucifixion brought victory to God. And lastly, we have this menorah coin with 5 branches, which could depict 5 wounds of Christ. And again, the 5 wounds of Christ are depicted on the Arab Sasanian coin. If you follow the symbolism, there are 5 different causes of wounds on Christ's body. You have the 4 nails and the single spear. So that would make up 5 wounds. So what do you think? Leave your comments below, and I will see you all very soon. All the best. Bye-bye.